Welcome to Lies and Secrets channel. We hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching. On a bright and sunny afternoon as I strolled along the creek, I was unaware that my life was about to take an unexpected turn. I'm Abigail, and this is the tale of how a moment of curiosity led to a monumental error in judgment. The air was crisp, filled with the fragrance of wild flowers and fresh grass. I frequently walked this path to clear my mind, but today something unusual caught my attention. A stunning C**********nut beautiful horse grazing in a nearby pasture. Its coat shone under the sun, and I felt an inexplicable pull towards the fence. As I drew closer, the beautiful horse raised its head, meeting my gaze with gentle, intelligent eyes. There was an inviting calmness in its look that I couldn't resist without much thought. I climbed over the wooden fences, my shoes sinking slightly into the soft earth. On the other side, the beautiful horse remained still. As I approached, it seemed as if it was waiting for me, so I reached out, amazed by the softness of its coat beneath my fingers. Having never been this close to a beautiful horse, I was struck by its size and strength. Despite its powerful form, there was a gentleness that put me at ease as I ran my hand along its side. The beautiful horse appeared to enjoy the attention. Its ears were relaxed, and it let out a soft snort, which I took as a sign of contentment. Encouraged by its calm demeanor, I decided to explore further. My hand moved lower, and that's when I noticed something unfamiliar between the beautiful horse's back legs was what I assumed to be its genitals. I realize now her naive in this sense, but at the time my knowledge of beautiful horse anatomy was limited. Curiosity got the best of me, and before I could reconsider, I reached out to touch it. Texture was surprising. It was softer than I anticipated on the outside, but there was something firm beneath the surface. As I continued to explore with my fingers, I noticed it starting to change. The firmness I felt began to grow and extend. I was captivated. I had never witnessed anything like this before, and part of me couldn't look away. Continued to grow far larger than I had imagined. By the time it stopped, it must have been at least a foot long. The beautiful horse whined and tossed its head, which I interpreted as a positive reaction. Looking back, I understand how misguided my assumptions were, but in the moment I was too caught up in my curiosity to think clearly. I squatted down to get a better look. Noticing the beautiful horse testicles for the first time, they were much larger than I expected. Hanging low and heavy. Without thinking, I reached out to touch them too. They felt warm and alive, with a subtle movement inside that I couldn't quite explain. As I continued my exploration, I noticed a clear, thick fluid beginning to emerge from the tip of the beautiful horse's penis. It was unlike anything I had ever seen before, sticky and shiny, almost like honey. The more I touched, the more of this fluid appeared, forming small puddles on the ground. In a moment of reckless curiosity, I decided to taste it. The flavor was surprisingly sweet, reminiscent of apples. I know now how dangerous and inappropriate this was, but at the time I was too caught up in the moment to consider the consequences of my actions. As I continued, more and more of the fluid emerged. It was too much for me to handle, and I found myself struggling to swallow it all. Some of it spied from my lips, adding to the mess on the ground. Their beautiful horse genitals seemed to grow even larger, stretching my mouth uncomfortably. Suddenly, without warning, the beautiful horse began to ejaculate. The force of it took me by surprise, and I couldn't contain it all. It so braced over my face and hair, leaving me soaked and sticky. Amidst this chaos, I felt a rush of excitement and pleasure that I'm now deeply ashamed of. Caught up in the moment, I failed to notice someone approaching until it was too late. To my horror, I glanced up to find my husband Alexander standing by the fence, his face a mix of shock and disgust. "Abigail, what on earth are you doing?" His voice was filled with disbelief and anger. Reality hid me like a ton of bricks. I scrambled to my feet, frantically trying to clean the mess from my face and clothes. "Alexander, I can explain," I stammered, knowing full well there was no justification that could make this right. Alexander's expression twisted with rage and hurt. "Explain. How could you possibly explain this? He shouted. I can't believe my eyes. How could you do something like this? I felt a wave of nausea. The full weight of my actions hit me all at once. Please. Alexander, I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. It just happened. I murmured. But Alexander wasn't listening. He turned away, unable to even look at me. I don't know who you are anymore, he said. His voice breaking. This is disgusting. I can't be around you right now. With that, he walked away, leaving me alone in the pasture. I sank to my knees, overwhelmed by shame and regret. How could I have done this? How could I have betrayed Alexander's trust in such a terrible way? I stayed there for felt like hours, crying until I had no tears left. Their hall stood nearby, oblivious to the turmoil it had inadvertently caused. As the sun began to set, I finally picked myself up and made my way home, dreading what lay ahead. The days that followed were a blur of arguments, tears, and painful silences. Alexander moved air temporarily, saying he needed space to process what had happened. I immersed myself in therapy, desperate to understand my reckless behavior and determined to ensure it never happened again. Slowly, painfully, Alexander and I began to rebuild our relationship. It wasn't easy. There were times when I feared we wouldn't make it, when the hurt and betrayal seemed insurmountable, but we persevered, taking it one day at a time. I made a solemn promise to myself and to Alexander that I would never repeat my mistake. I avoided farms and pastures, turning away if I saw a beautiful horse in the distance. It was a constant reminder of my error, but also of my commitment to change. As weeks turned into months, I noticed small signs of progress. Alexander began to soften towards me, though the pain was still evident in his eyes. We started couples therapy, working through our issues together. It was hard, often painful work, but I was determined to prove to Alexander that I could be the partner he deserved. One evening, about 6 months after the incident, Alexander took my hand as we sat on the couch. Abigail, he said softly, I want you to know that I'm trying to forgive you. It's not easy and I'm still hurt, but I see how hard you're working to change. I think we can get through this. Tears welled up in my eyes, but this time they were tears of hope and gratitude. Thank you, Alexander, I whispered. I promise I'll never let you down again. As I reflect on this journey, I am struck by how close I came to losing everything. My moment of weakness nearly destroyed my marriage and my sense of self, but it also taught me invaluable lessons about self-control, the importance of communication in a relationship and the power of forgiveness. I know the road ahead won't be easy. There will always be a part of Alexander that remembers what happened, and I'll carry the weight of my actions for the rest of my life. But I'm committed to moving forward, to being a better person and a better wife. If there's one takeaway from my story, it's this. No matter how curious you might be, no matter what impulses you might feel, always consider the consequences of your actions. The fleeting thrill is never worth the pain and damage it can cause to yourself and those you love. As for me, I'm focused on the future. Rebuilding trust and intimacy with Alexander has been a slow and deliberate process. We've even started discussing the possibility of starting a family, something that seemed unimaginable during the darkest days following my mistake. This progress gives me hope for the future and is a testament to how far we've come. I've learned that true happiness doesn't stem from fleeting thrills or forbidden experiences. It is found in the deep, enduring connections we nurture with the people we care about. It means staying true to ourselves and our values even when faced with temptation. My path to healing and redemption is ongoing, but I'm dedicated to seeing it through. Each day I strive to be the best version of myself, to honor Alexander's forgiveness, and to build a future filled with love, trust, and mutual respect. As I reflect on this journey, I'm reminded of a quote I once read. The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising. Every time we fall, I fell hard, but I'm rising again, stronger and wiser than before, and for that, despite all the pain and regret. I'm grateful. The journey of rebuilding trust is never straightforward. As time went on, Alexander and I continued to work on our relationship but moments of tension and doubt persisted. I could see the lingering pain in his eyes, a constant reminder of my grave mistake. One evening, after a particularly challenging therapy session, Alexander turned to me with a serious expression. "Abigail," he said softly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." My heart raised, but I nodded of course. "Alexander, anything." He took a deep breath before continuing. "Have you ever done anything like that before or since with any other animals?" Question hit me like a punch to the gut. I knew it was coming eventually, but it still hurt to hear it out loud. "No, Alexander," I replied, firmly looking him directly in the eyes. "Never before and absolutely never since. What happened that day was a horrible one-time mistake that I will regret for the rest of my life." Alexander held my gaze for a long moment, searching for any sign of deception. Finally, he nodded. "Okay. I believe you." Those 4 words meant more to me than I could express. Felt like a tiny crack in the wall of mistrust that had grown between us. As we continued to work on our relationship I found myself reflecting more and more on what had led me to make such a terrible choice that day in therapy. Both individual and couples, we explored issues I had and even realized were there feelings of boredom in our marriage, a desire for excitement that I'd been suppressing, and deep-seated insecurities that I'd never fully addressed. It wasn't easy to confront these parts of myself, but I knew it was necessary if we were ever going to move forward. Alexander, for his part, was working through his own issues, feelings of inadequacy that my actions had intensified, and learning how to trust again after such a profound betrayal. Months passed, and slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, things began to change. The silences between us grew less tense. We started to laugh together again, tentatively at first, then more freely one night as we were washing dishes together, a chore had always done as a team. Before everything fell apart, Alexander playfully flicked some soap suds at me. It was such a small thing, but it felt like a huge step forward. However, just as things seemed to be improving, we hit another roadblock. Alexander's brother was getting married, and the reception was to be held at a ranch. As soon as Alexander told me, I felt a wave of panic wash over me. "Don't know if I can go." I stammered, my hands shaking as I sat down my coffee. "Mub." Alexander's face fell. "Abigail, it's my brother's wedding. We have to go, but there might be beautiful horses there." I whispered, shame coloring my cheeks. Alexander's expression was a blend of pain and frustration. "Do you really think you can't control yourself around beautiful horses now?" Here, words stung, but I knew I deserved them. "No, it's not that," I tried to explain. "I'm afraid of how you feel seeing me ran them. I don't want to put you through that." Alexander was silent for a long moment. Then he reached out and took my hand. "Abigail, we can't avoid beautiful horses for the rest of our lives. Some point we have to face this. Maybe this is that point." I nodded, tears in my eyes. "You're right. I'll go. I promise I won't let you down." The day of the wedding arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves. As we drove to the ranch, I could feel the tension radiating from Alexander. When we arrived, I saw the stables in the distance and felt my stomach lurch. But as the day went on, something unexpected happened. Being around the beautiful horses, seeing them from afar, hearing tempt, it reinforced my commitment to Alexander and to our marriage. Every time I caught a glimpse of a beautiful horse, it reminded me of how much I had nearly lost and strengthened my resolve to never make such a mistake again. During the reception, Alexander's eyes kept darting between me and the stables. Finally, as the sun was setting, he took my hand. "Let's go for a walk," he said. My heart patting, I followed him. We walked in silence until we reached the fence of the beautiful horse pasture. A beautiful horse was grazing nearby. Alexander turned to me, his eyes searching my face. "How do you feel right now?" he asked quietly. I took a deep breath, considering my answer. "Carefully grateful," I finally said. "Grateful for you, for us, for this chance to make things right." That beautiful horse, it's beautiful, but that's all. What happened that day was a terrible mistake. 1. I'll never repeat being here now with you. This is all I want, all I'll ever want. Alexander's eyes welled up with tears and he pulled me into a tight embrace. We stood there for a long time, holding each other as the sun disappeared behind the hills. That day marked a turning point in our healing process. Didn't magically fix everything. We still had work to do, trust to rebuild, but it was a significant step forward. In the months that followed, Alexander and I continued to work on our relationship. We made a point of being more open with each other, sharing our fears and insecurities instead of letting them fester. We also started to plan for our future again, something we hadn't done since before the incident. One evening, as we sat on our back porch watching the sunset, Alexander turned to me with a serious expression. "Abigail," he said, "I've been thinking. I think I'm ready to start trying for a baby." I felt my heart skip a beata. We had talked about having children before everything happened, but I had assumed that dream was lost. "Are you sure?" I asked, hardly daring to hope. Alexander nodded, a small smile on his face. "I'm sure what happened. It was terrible and it will always be a part of our story. But it's not our whole story. I love you, Abigail. I want to build a family with you." Tears of joy streamed down my face as I hugged him tightly. "I love you too, Alexander. So much as I write this, I'm 6 months pregnant with our first child. The journey has been far from easy and I know we'll face more challenges in the future. But I'm no longer the person I was on that fateful day by the creek. I'm stronger now, more self-aware, and infinitely more grateful for the love and life I have to anyone who might be tempted to give into a momentary impulse, no matter how exciting it might seem. I urge you to stop and think. Consider the potential consequences not just for yourself but for those you love. No fleeting thrill is worth the pain and heartache that can follow to those who might be struggling to forgive a partner who has made a grave mistake. Remember that forgiveness is a journey, not a destination. It requires time, effort, and a willingness to be vulnerable. But if both partners are committed to healing and growth, it is possible to rebuild trust and create a relationship stronger than before. As for me, I'll spend the rest of my life ensuring I'm worthy of the forgiveness and trust Sheikh has extended to me every day. I choose to be faithful, honest, and loving. I choose our marriage, our future, our family. The mistakes of our past don't have to define us. They can if we let them become the catalyst for profound change and growth. My moment of weakness nearly cost me everything, but it also led me to become a better, stronger person. Taught me the true value of love, trust, and forgiveness. As I feel our baby kick inside me, I'm filled with hope for the future. Alexander and I have weathered a storm that could have torn us apart, but instead it brought us closer together. We're not perfect, and our relationship isn't flawless, but it's real, it's honest, and it's built on a foundation of love and mutual respect that's been tested and proven strong. Our story isn't over in many ways. It feels like it's just beginning, and I'm grateful for every moment, every challenge, every opportunity to show Alexander and myself that love can truly conquer all. 72. I found myself a widow living in solitude. My only companion had been my cat, Liam, and after his par, the silence in my home became overwhelming. My daughter Sarah suggested I consider a pet to alleviate my loneliness, and eventually I chose to adopt a beautiful dog. I brought Teddy home from the shelter, not realizing the profound French that would blossom. Initially, he was simply a dark, albeit an exceptionally attentive one. Teddy seemed to sense my moods. He would nudge my hand with his cool nose and whack his tail to lift my spirits. I often found myself talking to him, a habit many would consider normal when there's no one else around. Over time, our bond deepened into something I never anticipated. I vividly recall one particular night, a night that marked a shift within me. I was seated on the couch, lost in thoughts of Liam. It was the anniversary of Liam passing, and I was weary from tears. Teddy sat beside me, but this evening was different. He climbed onto the couch and rested his head on my lap. His gaze met mine, seemingly absorbing the weight of my sorrow as if he truly understood. I murmured, "You're a good boy." Teddy, while gently stroking his soft ears. His presence eased my heartache. Felt as though he was the only one who comprehended my pain. The way he looked at me wasn't merely that of a peck to its owner. It was more profound, an emotion that felt almost human. This connection grew over the months, and Teddy ceased being just a pet to me. Each morning I awoke to find him at the foot of my bed, where Liam once slept. This new routine became something I cherished and eagerly anticipated. Even on quiet nights, comfort of his warm body beside me brought its own solace. It wasn't just his warmth that changed things. It was his constant presence. He began shadowing me everywhere, watching me intently, a behavior that initially unsettled me. His eyes seemed to follow my every move with unwavering anticipation. Before long, I realized an indescribable connection had formed between us. It was a mystery to me at the time. One particular evening stood out. It was late and the house was still. I had just finished my tea and was preparing for bed when Teddy banded into the room as he often did. However, this time he didn't settle at the foot of the bed. Instead, he sat beside me, his deep dark eyes pierced into mine. A peculiar flutter stirred within my C*******T. "Teddy, what are you doing?" I asked softly, attempting to lighten the sudden tension. Yet he remained unmoved. He continued to gaze at me, his eyes filled with an intensity that both intrigued and unsettled me. My heart raced, yet I couldn't look away. Felt absurd. In that moment, I could have sworn I saw something extraordinary. It was beyond the ordinary. I felt confused as Teddy nestled closer to my side. He rested his head on my H***** and whacked his tail gently. There was an unspoken connection, and I found myself reaching Ed to stroke him. My fingers quiver slightly. It was then I realized the warmth of a bunt one hadn't felt in years. Not since that night with Liam had things been so profoundly different. Teddy's attachment to me grew stronger with each passing day. Wherever I went, he was there watching, waiting, always seeking to be near. The night we shared that close contact, he drew even nearer. His presence was comforting, yes, but there was an underlying discomfort. I couldn't quite shake at first. I struggled to acknowledge it. I recall waking one night, bathed in moonlit, casting shadows across the room, and there was Teddy nestled beside me. His face was so near I could feel his breath, causing me to pause. As I reached out to stroke his fur, a wave of warmth enveloped me. He responded by snuggling closer, and in that half-asleep state, vulnerability took hold. An undeniable awareness dawned on me. Our connection was deepening in ways I couldn't easily rationalize. I tried dismissing it, attributing it to loneliness playing tricks on my mind. After all, I was an elderly woman who had lost her lifelong companion. Was it wrong to find solace in a beautiful dog? Yet the feelings intensified. Teddy seemed attuned to it as well. He shadowed me everywhere, always by my side. His eyes never strayed from me. Felt as though an unseen force was binding us beyond ordinary friendship. It was bewildering yet undeniable. I needed him more than I cared to admit. Then came the night that altered everything. Restless and unable to sleep. My thoughts were a chaotic whirlwind, and I couldn't shake the sensation that something was evolving between us. I ventured downstairs, hoping a glass of water would soothe my nerves, but upon returning to the bedroom, Teddy was already there, occupying my side of the bed. As I approached, he remained still, not even blinking, simply waiting for me. I hesitated, but eventually slipped into bed. As I settled under the covers, Teddy moved closer, his body pressed against mine, offering a peculiar comfort. My mind, like constellations descending into a dark world, should have recoiled, for nature seemed momentarily altered, yet I allowed him to stay. We quietly absorbed each other's warmth. My heart voids that had been empty for so long, yet I felt no shame. As we lay there, I experienced a tranquility unlike any since Liam passing. felt wrong, perhaps, but in another sense it was undeniably right. In a way I couldn't articulate. We spent a long time there in the darkness. There was no urgency to rise. In the days that followed, a tumultuous mix of confusion and guilt enveloped me. This evolving relationship ***s with Teddy was perplexing, yet I couldn't pull away. I needed him more than I'd realized. The depth of the void within me had been greater than I knew. But as weeks passed, clarity emerged. This unusual emotional entanglement with my canine companion wasn't healthy. I was dissatisfied with life, and I was particularly troubled by the lack of control. I found myself in an unimaginable situation. The first step was to stop confronting reality. I realized I was seeking from Teddy what I should have sought from people, family, and friends. Admitting this was difficult, but the truth became clear. I had to sever this toxic bond before it deepened. Teddy was a wonderful, loyal, beautiful dog, yet he couldn't fill the void left by Liam, so I began to withdraw. I spent more time with Saw and my grandchildren, reconnecting with the human relationship **** I had neglected. I reconnected with old friends and rediscovered activities that once brought me joy. Teddy remained a constant presence in my life. He was always by my side, but I consciously established the boundaries I needed. I reminded myself that he was, after all, just a beautiful dog. He was my loyal companion, but not a substitute for human connection. Reflecting on this, I realized how easily loneliness can lead one into unexpected, even decadent emotional territories. I had allowed my grief to cloud my judgment. This led to an unhealthy attachment, but eventually I found my way back and learned to lean on those who truly cared for me. Most importantly, I understood that despite my affection for Teddy, he could never fulfill my need for human interaction. Now in my quiet home, Teddy lies at my feet as he always does. I wish I could say that everything returned to normal after I decided to redefine my relationship ***s with Teddy. But the truth is the journey back was long and arduous. Some evenings, when the silence felt overwhelming, I found myself dashing and seeking comfort in Teddy. Old habits die hard after all. Each day I reminded myself that this was an unhealthy dynamic detrimental to both of us. He was a beautiful dog offering unconditional love, but he couldn't replace the human connections I craved. I began seeking more opportunities to engage with people. My daughter Abigail was the first to notice this change. During a tea visit one afternoon, she remarked, "Mom, you've been visiting more often these days." There was a warmth in her voice that I hadn't heard in years. I realized my withdrawal had also left a void for them. "I just don't want to be alone so much," I admitted, though I wasn't ready to share the peculiar bond one had formed with Teddy. How could I? I felt ashamed, and Abigail was always practical. She couldn't possibly grasp the depth of my loneliness. Smiling, she reassured me, "We're always here for you, ma'am." You know that her words brought comfort but also regret. Why hadn't I reached Ed sooner? Why had I let my grief and isolation push me towards such a strange emotional reliance on a beautiful dog rather than my own family? I made a concerted effort to reconnect with the world beyond my little home. I resumed reading, something I hadn't done in ages, and joined a local book club. It was challenging to sit and chat with other women. They spoke of children and grandchildren, their lives bustling with people I felt out of place. Years of solitude had eroded my social skills, but slowly I began to enjoy their company. We discussed novels over tea, laughed at plots and characters that reminded us of people we knew. It felt wonderful to laugh again, to feel that long-lost lightness in my heart. Teddy remained my steadfast friend, but I became more mindful of the boundaries I needed to maintain. No longer did I allow him to sleep in my bed. It was a habit I had to break. Instead, on my darkest days, I would gently pat his head before bed, and he would settle into his cozy spot at my feet. Initially, it was difficult to resist the urge to pull him close and let his warmth comfort me as it once did, but I knew I had to be steadfast. As the months passed, I began to notice changes within myself. While I suspected there would always be a place for Liam in my heart, The loneliness that once weighed so heavily no longer drove me to seek solace in Teddy. Slowly I was learning that pain and emptiness are universal experiences, but they do not define who I am. I had friends, people I could reach out to, and I had Teddy yet. Despite his boundless affection, it wasn't the kind of love I truly yearned for. On a bright autumn afternoon, roughly a year after the peculiar turning point with Teddy, I realized I had reached a significant milestone. I went for a stroll in the park with Teddy happily trotting beside me. The air was crisp, leaves danced in the breeze, and the scent of pine filled the air. As I glanced around, I noticed others walking their beautiful dogs. They laughed and chatted, and I was pleasantly surprised to see some familiar faces. It was remarkably easy to appreciate the companionship **s of both humans and animals. As Teddy paused to sniff the fallen land leaves, his tail warped contentedly, and I smiled at him. "You're a good, beautiful dog," I murmured, scratching his ears. He gazed up at me with his warm brown eyes filled with the same love and loyalty he had always shown. But now I understood it for what it was, pure, simple, and unconditional. Still, it wasn't enough to fill the void that only human relations could address. In the months that followed, I opened up more. I let my family in, sharing the struggles I faced and confronting the loneliness that had engulfed me after Liam passing. I even hinted to Abigail in a runabout way about how much I had come to rely on Teddy. She listened quietly, her expression full of understanding, and when I finished, she embraced me tightly. "Mom," she said softly, "we're always here for the first time in a long while." I believed her. I realized I didn't have to navigate this journey alone. There were people who loved me and wanted to help me heal. And while Teddy was an essential part of this journey, he couldn't be my entire world. He was my beautiful dog, my steadfast friend. But I needed to start trusting those around me again. Reflecting on it all, I saw how loneliness could lead one into unusual circumstances, forming bonds that might seem perplexing to others yet. Ultimately, what truly matters are the connections with people, the care and support from family and friends. Teddy would always hold a special place in my heart, but I was beginning to embrace the world beyond my quiet home once more. Here we are, Teddy. He lies at my feet. I feel a sense of peace and natural calm, and this signifies that I am reconnecting with the source of my pain and welcoming those closest to me back into my life. After all, it's the bonds with people that ultimately mend our heart's. Temporary solace can never fully replace the healing power of human connection. No matter how loyal a beautiful dog may be. My wife was taking care of our neighbor's enormous beautiful dog while they were out of town, and during that time, the beautiful dog overpowered her in a way she couldn't resist. Surprisingly, she found herself enjoying it. It was an otherwise typical Thursday evening, one of those moments when life seems to pause, offering a brief respite for the usual hustle and bustle. I had just returned from work feeling the wear seep into my bones, making age step a struggle. But there was something different about the atmosphere in our home tonight. It felt charged, as if an unidentifiable energy was lingering in the air. I discovered her in the kitchen, her back to me as she bent over to retrieve something from the oven. The scene was ordinary, yet there was a strange to it, or dressed slightly, hitting up, revealing the sliver of skin. I stood there unnoticed, observing her as she straightened up, a bead of sweat sliding into her neck. I greeted, attempting to sound casual while trying to ignore the tightness in my *******T and the odd me of curiosity and apprehension building inside me. She turned, surprise, momentarily crossing her face before it was replaced by a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, you're home. Early," she remarked, her voice tinged with something unsaid, something concealed. "Ye left work a bit early, thought I'd surprise you." I moved closer, sing her cheek, trying to find normalcy in our touch, but it felt different. Burdened with an undercurrent I couldn't comprehend, we sat down for dinner, the clicking of cutlery against the plates, the only sound for a while. I kept glancing at her, attempting to decipher the change in her demeanor. Had I done something wrong? Was it work-related? But no, there was something else, something she was withholding from me. Then she spoke, breaking the silence like a dam giving way. There's something I need to tell you. My heart panned in my C*******T, a primal fear surfacing. What could she possibly reveal? I braced myself, fork suspended in midday, the beautiful dog. When I was looking after him, something happened. Her words lingered in the air, heavy and oppressive. I felt my stomach drop, a cold sweat beginning to form on my forehead. What could a beautiful dog to that would require such a confession? She continued, her voice barely above a whisper. He was so large and he pinned me down and I couldn't move. I couldn't resist my mind race, trying to process her words. What was she implying? The images that flicker prove my mind were both grotesque and disturbingly compelling, a combination I couldn't reconcile. I tried to push him away, but there was something about it, something primal, wild. Her voice faded, her eyes avoiding mine, filled with a mix of shame and something else, something I couldn't define. I didn't know what to say or how to react. The betrayal, if that's what it was, didn't involve another person but something far more primal, far more unsettling. Did you like it? Question slipped out before I could stop it by full sanding, foreign detached her. Hesitation was all the answer I needed. I felt a surge of emotions, anger, confusion, and perverse curiosity. How could she, and yet part of me wanted to understand, to explore the dark wrecks of her mind where this indic act had taken root. The silence that followed was definitely broken only by the soft panting of the dark, now lying at her feet, its tail pussing against the floor, oblivious to the it had brought into our eyes. I stared at him, at this woman I wrote my, and realized there were lays where depths I have never explored, or perhaps dar to my knowledge. In that instant, the boundary between right and what became indistinct, leaving me with more questions than answers. What did this mean for us? Could I ever view her the same way again? More unnettingly, why did a part of me find this revelation oddly intriguing? The evening stretched into night, the tension mounting, each tick of the clock echoing the pulse of my heart, the rhythm of a life coming undone. As darkness deepened outside, I felt an abyss opening within each second, bragging with the weight of eternity. The familiar comforts of our home now seemed like the backdrop for a tragedy. I finally broke the silence, my voice a mere whisper, yet it carried the weight of countless unspoken accusations. How long has this been happening? Her eyes, once mirrors of love and laughter, now appeared, clouded with guilt and something else, defiance. She inhaled deeply, her C******T rising in a way that under different circumstances would have stirred me. But now it only fueled my sense of betrayal. Since last month she confessed, her voice above a whisper, yet each would come for the air like a knife. Started when I was walking. Once out, there was this connection, a connection with a beautiful dog. The absurdity would have been offered if it wasn't so devastating here. I was imagining here with another woman, or even another woman, but a beautiful dog. My mind read, trying to grasp the implications. I managed to joke out of wanting the detail, I picking at his SCA. It was after the accident when I had to take him to the vent. He was so hurt, and in those moments of terror, and something shifted. I started seeing him differently. The patrol wasn't just in the act. It was in the revelation that this was not just about physicality. It was an emotional, an entanglement, or as close as one could get. Under these bizarre circumstances, I looked at Arthur, now dozing at her feet, blissfully unaware of the chaos he had helped create. His innocence rendered the whole scenario even worseal. Did you ever think about us, about what this would do to us? My voice crackpot, betraying the storm within. I did, she said. And there was that look again, a mix of sorrow and something darker. But sometimes we can't control what we feel or whom we feel for. The room felt like it was closing in the walls, whispering secrets I was not meant to hear. Betrayal was always painted as an affair, a secret lover. But this was a twisted narrative I could never have anticipated. And Arthur. I couldn't even say his name without a twinge of bitterness. What about him now? Her gaze dropped to the beautiful dog in her face, often a stark contrast to the tension between us. I'm not sure it's complicated, that word didn't even begin to cover it. My mind, raised with scenarios, none of them comforting the life we had built together, seemed to crumple before my eyes, not from the usual cracks of infidelity, but from something so unexpected, so utterly bewildering, the silence. Turned, but this time it was different. It was not just the absence of sound, but the presence of an unspoken end. Quiet before the storm of revelations. I stood up, feeling the need to move, to break free from this suffocating revelation. My steps felt heavy, each one a decision made, a boundary crossed. The room seemed to shrink as I paced. My thoughts are whirlwind of disbelief and pain. "Will you stop this?" I asked, hoping against hope for an answer that might salvage some part of our reality. She didn't answer immediately, and in that pause my heart sank further. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm. "I need time to understand, to decide time." That's what she needed. While my world was crumbling, the room seemed to spin as I grappled with her words, the implications of her need for time and what that truly meant for us. The relentless ticking of the clock seemed to mock me, marking each second of this real nightmare. How could one reconcile such a betrayal? Was there even way back from this? In that moment, I felt an overwhelming urge for her air, for space to think, to breathe without the weight of her confession bearing down on me. I moved toward the door, my hand resting on the knob, hesitating. Did I want to leave? Was this the end, or merely a strange intermission in our shared life? The door creaked open, and as I stepped out into the cool night, I left behind not just the warmth of our home, but the comfort of what I believed was our shared reality. The night was silent, save for the distant height of a dark point, reminder of the night's revelations echoing through the darkness according to an uncertain future. The cool air hid my face, the sharp contrast to the stifling atmosphere sight. As I walked down the street, my mind was a woman of forces, each more chaotic than the last. Was it just time she needed? Or was it time away for me? The beautiful dog's distant house seemed to echo my inner terror, a lonely cry in the night that felt all too familiar. My feet carried me to the park, the place where we had shared so many lives, so many dreams. But now, every shadow seemed to hold a secret. Every bench, a silent witness to a love now questioned. I sat down on our favorite bench, the one we always claimed as ours. Felt different now, colder, as if the very wood resented my presence. I couldn't shake the image of her face when she told me the guilt and sorrow in her eyes. What did that look mean? Was it regret for what she had done or for what she was about to do? The betrayal was like a knife slicing through the trust one had placed in her and us. As I stared at the moon, its serene glow offered no comfort, only a stark reminder of the light that had left my life. The bench creaked under me, and for a moment I imagined it was her voice telling me something I wasn't ready to hear. Why, I whispered into the night, why, if you loved me, did you do this? The silence was my only answer, and the howl of the beautiful dog once more, as if it too was searching for an answer, for a resolution to its own pain. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about time. It was about truth. Had she ever been truthful with me, or was our relationship built on a foundation of lies? The thought was unbearable, yet it was all I could think about. Each moment we had shared, every whispered promise, every laugh now felt like a lie. The betrayal wasn't just her act of infidelity. It was the years of deceit that had led up to this moment. My heart raised with a mix of anger and sorrow. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but the fear of what I might hear held me back. What if she confirmed my most fears? What if she said she never loved me? Could I handle that truth? The park was empty, save for the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant bark of a beautiful dog, perhaps the same one whose hell had marked the night's beginning. It was almost poetic the way the beautiful dog's cry seemed to echo my own internal high, a sound of pain, confusion, and an uncertain future. I stood up, feeling the cold sea into my bones, matching the jewel in my heart. I knew I had to go back, not for answers, but because part of I still hoped for a miracle, for to explain so a terrible mistake. But did death? I knew that hope was as lathing as the autumn leaves that fell, and the path back home was long, each step heavy with the weight of betray. As I neared our house, the lights were still on, casting long shadows on shadows that seemed to stretch out, reaching for me, pulling me back into the nightmare. I paused up the doorstep, my hand, however, over the door. Could I confront her? Could I bear to hear whatever explanation she might offer? The door loomed large, an entrance not just to our home, but to a confrontation I wasn't sure I was ready for. With a deep breath, I turned the knob, stepping back into a life I no longer recognized, prepared to face the truth, whatever it might be. As I entered, the warmth of the house felt like an unfamiliar embrace. The familiar scent of lavender and vanilla candles filled the air, now tainted with the bitterness of betrayal. There she was, her silhouette framed by the soft glow of the living room, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and something else. Was it guilt or fear? Daniel, her voice broke, the heavy silence, trembling as if she sensed the storm within me. Let me explain. What could any explanation repair the trust between us? My hope panned and my C*******T, each be echoing like the DR. I walked past her, the brush carpet, feeling her quicks and threatening to pull me into despair. I stopped in the middle of the room, turning slowly to face her. Explain, I questioned, my voice a cold whisper. Can you explain the lipstick on his call? The text messages, the way you looked at him at the party. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Where I away from? I unable to hold my mind raised with images. The memories of our life together are tainted. Every touch, every every whisper. I love you. Did any of it mean anything to her? What we heard, Emily, was it just alive? I asked, not expecting an answer yet. Union for one that would undo the past few hours. The one felt like it was shrinking the wars, closing it as if to force a confrontation and exorcism of our demons. She took a step forward, her hand reaching out, but I stepped back. The distance between us now, not just physical but fast, insurmountable. I didn't mean for it to happen. Lucia, she finally said, her voice bearing a whisper, carrying the weight of affairs and regrets it. It was a moment of weakness, a moment of weakness. The words don't like a betrayal all over again. How long does it take for a moment to turn into weeks, into months? How much time did we lose to her weakness? I moved towards the window, looking out into the night, the darkness reflecting the turmoil inside me. And now I asked, my back still turned to her, not wanting to see the expression that would surely accompany her next words. Her reply was soft, almost inaudible over the sound of my own heartbeat. In the end, the truth always surfaces, leaving us to face the consequences of our choices. In that moment, I realized that moving forward would require more than just words. It would demand a reckoning with the past and a decision about thief. You feel that this story is meaningful and brings useful lessons, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me. Thanks for listening.